You just spent 3 hours at a social gathering. You smiled, you laughed, you made small talk about weather and weekend plans and that new restaurant everyone's talking about. You performed perfectly. Everyone seemed to enjoy your company. And now you're home and you feel completely drained, not just tired, depleted, like someone reached into your core and extracted something essential. You sit in silence, trying to recover what you lost. And you wonder, why does everyone else seem energized by the exact thing that exhausts you? Here's what nobody tells you. Socializing isn't universally beneficial. For certain types of people, the reflective, the intellectual, the genuinely autonomous, socializing is actively harmful, not just neutral, not just uncomfortable, harmful. Schopenhauer understood this at a fundamental level. He recognized that most human interaction is a form of mutual exploitation disguised as connection, that small talk is cognitive violence, that the pressure to be social is society's way of preventing you from becoming truly independent. Think about how much of your life you've wasted in conversations that added nothing to your understanding, your growth, or your peace. Think about how many times you've compressed yourself into a socially acceptable shape just to avoid being labeled antisocial or weird. Think about the profound relief you feel when plans get canceled. This isn't about social anxiety. This isn't about introversion. This is about recognizing that for philosophically minded individuals, socializing is a net negative transaction. You give more than you receive, you lose more than you gain, and you return to yourself diminished rather than enriched. Schopenhauer's philosophy offers something radical, permission.
Every social interaction requires a performance. You know this intimately. The moment you enter a social space, you activate a different version of yourself, one that's simpler, more palatable, more agreeable than who you actually are. You modulate your vocabulary, you suppress your actual opinions, you pretend to care about topics that bore you, you laugh at jokes that aren't funny, you nod along with statements you know are wrong. You perform interest, perform agreement, perform enthusiasm. Schopenhauer wrote, "We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people." But he was being generous. For truly independent thinkers, the forfeiture is closer to 9/10. You compress your entire cognitive complexity into a fraction of what you are just to fit through the narrow doorway of social acceptability. Think about your last social interaction. How much of your actual self were you able to express? Your genuine thoughts about philosophy, about existence, about the systems and patterns you observe. How much did you have to translate, simplify, or simply suppress? This is the performance tax, the cognitive and emotional cost of making yourself socially digestible. And unlike financial taxes that fund public goods, this tax funds nothing. It's pure loss. Here's what happens in your brain during social performance. You're tracking the conversation, minimal cognitive load. You're monitoring your facial expressions and body language, performance management. You're calculating what's safe to say versus what you actually think, self-censorship. You're predicting how your words will be received, social calculus. You're suppressing your authentic responses, emotional regulation. You're maintaining the persona that keeps you included, identity management. You're running 6 parallel processes where authentic solitude requires one, just being yourself. Schopenhauer observed, "A man can be himself so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free." This isn't misanthropy, it's math. The number of people present is inversely proportional to the percentage of yourself you can express. One person, you might express 60% of yourself. Two people, 40%. Three people, 20%. A party of 10, you're down to 5% of your actual cognitive and emotional reality. And here's the cruelest part. This performance isn't optional. If you don't perform, you're labeled difficult, arrogant, antisocial, or not a team player. Society punishes authenticity and rewards performance. So you perform, and with each performance, you lose a little more of yourself. The performance tax isn't paid in money. It's paid in authenticity, in energy, in the slow erosion of your connection to who you actually are. And most people pay it their entire lives without even...
Here's the second reason socializing is harmful. Other people's mediocrity is contagious. You've noticed this. After spending time with people who think conventionally, who consume mainstream narratives without question, who mistake confidence for competence, you feel intellectually dulled, like their mental habits have temporarily infected your own cognitive processes. Schopenhauer understood. We seldom speak of what we have, but always of what we lack. The majority of men are not capable of thinking, but only of believing, and are not accessible to reason, but only to authority. When you socialize with the majority, you're not engaging with independent thought, you're engaging with second-hand beliefs, unexamined assumptions, and received opinions. This isn't elitism, this is observation. Most people don't think, they echo. They don't analyze, they absorb. They don't question, they conform. And when you spend time with them, their mode of cognition becomes your environment. Think about the conversations you've had this week. How many involved genuine intellectual exploration? How many challenged your thinking or introduced you to new frameworks? How many left you intellectually stimulated rather than exhausted? Now think about how many involved gossip about absent people, complaints without analysis, opinions without reasoning, consensus without examination, entertainment without meaning, status competition disguised as conversation. This is the mediocrity infection. It doesn't make you stupider, it makes you think like stupid people think. You start operating at their level because operating at your level would alienate them. So you descend, you simplify, you meet them where they are, and gradually where they are becomes where you are. Schopenhauer wrote, "Buying books would be a good thing if one could also buy the time to read them, but as a rule, the purchase of books is mistaken for the appropriation of their contents." The same applies to social interaction. Spending time with people is not the same as gaining value from them. Most socialization is empty transaction, time spent with no intellectual or emotional return. Here's the mechanism. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. It adapts to its environment. When you're surrounded by superficial thinking, your brain starts optimizing for superficial engagement. When you're surrounded by people who mistake volume for validity, you start unconsciously adopting that framework. You become like the people you spend time with. Not because you want to, because your brain is designed to adapt to its social environment. This was useful in tribal contexts where conformity meant survival.
The third reason socializing is harmful. It's an asymmetric energy exchange where you lose more than you gain. You've felt this countless times. You go into a social situation with a full tank. You engage, you contribute, you perform, and you leave depleted. Meanwhile, others seem energized. They gained energy from the interaction. You lost it. This isn't introversion. This is incompatibility. When someone with depth interacts with someone without it, the person with depth has to generate energy to bridge the gap. They have to translate their thoughts. They have to create accessible versions of complex ideas. They have to manage the other person's emotional state. They're doing all the cognitive heavy lifting. Schopenhauer observed, "Solitude is the lot of all excellent spirits." Not because excellent spirits are antisocial, but because mediocre spirits are energetically expensive to engage with. Think about your last conversation with someone intellectually incompatible. You had to simplify your language, provide more context than necessary, backtrack when they misunderstood, manage their emotional reactions to ideas, avoid topics that would confuse them, pretend their contributions were more insightful than they were. You were the generator, they were the consumer. You provided energy, they extracted it. This is how most social interactions work for intelligent people. You're always giving more than you receive because the gap in understanding requires you to do the bridging work. The less competent person doesn't even recognize there's a gap. They experience the conversation as equal exchange. You experience it as labor. Schopenhauer wrote, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." But hitting targets no one else can see is exhausting when you have to constantly explain what you're aiming at. And most social situations require exactly that, constant explanation of obvious things to people who can't see them. Here's the brutal math. If you have capacity for depth and you spend time with someone who doesn't, you have three options. Operate at their level, exhausting compression, try to raise them to yours, exhausting education, or accept the incompatibility and minimize interaction, socially unacceptable but energetically honest. Most people choose option one. They compress themselves. They spend their entire lives operating below their capacity because doing otherwise would be rude or arrogant, and they wonder why they're always tired. The energy extraction isn't balanced. Socializing takes more from you than it gives. Every interaction is a net negative, and the cumulative effect is a life spent energetically bankrupt, wondering why you're exhausted despite doing what society says you should do: be social, be connected, be available. You wouldn't invest in a financial instrument that consistently loses money, yet you invest in social relationships that consistently drain energy. You do this because society has convinced you that socializing is inherently good, that more connection is always better, that isolation is pathological. Society is wrong. For people like you, socializing is energetic suicide. And the sooner you accept this, the sooner you can stop depleting yourself in service of maintaining relationships that cost more than they're worth. The fourth reason socializing is harmful: it systematically erodes your autonomy. Every social connection creates an obligation, not a chosen obligation, an automatic one. The moment someone considers you their friend, their colleague, their person they know, you inherit a set of expectations. You're expected to respond to messages, attend events, show interest in their lives, provide emotional support, maintain the relationship. These aren't contracts you signed. They're social debts you incurred simply by being accessible. Schopenhauer understood, a man can do what he wants, but not want what he wants. Your will is not as free as you think. Every social connection is a thread connecting your choices to someone else's expectations. And the more connections you have, the more constrained your autonomy becomes. Think about how many decisions you make based on social obligations rather than genuine desire. Attending events you don't want to attend, maintaining friendships that no longer serve you, responding to messages you don't want to answer, pretending to care about things you don't care about, sacrificing your time for someone else's emotional needs.
This is autonomy erosion, gradual, insidious, socially enforced. You start with total freedom over your time and energy. Then you make friends. Then those friends have expectations. Then those expectations become obligations. Then those obligations become your life. And you wake up one day and realize you're not living according to your own will. You're living according to a complex web of social obligations you never consciously chose to honor. Schopenhauer wrote, "A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial." This isn't because intelligent people are rude. It's because they recognize that sociability is incompatible with autonomy. Every social connection is a claim on your autonomy, and for people who value deep work, sustained thought, philosophical contemplation, autonomy isn't optional, it's essential. You cannot think deeply when you're constantly managing social obligations. You cannot pursue understanding when you're perpetually interrupted by social expectations. You cannot be truly autonomous when your time belongs to other people's needs. Socializing doesn't just cost energy, it costs freedom. And freedom is the prerequisite for everything else that matters: genuine thought, creative work, philosophical inquiry, authentic living. The autonomy erosion is permanent. Once you've formed social connections, they don't easily dissolve. They persist, making claims on your time and attention, slowly converting your autonomous life into a socially negotiated existence.
The fifth reason socializing is harmful: it starves you of the solitude required for wisdom. Wisdom doesn't come from conversation. It comes from contemplation. It doesn't come from social engagement. It comes from sustained, solitary thought. Every hour you spend socializing is an hour you're not spending in the only environment where genuine understanding develops, alone, with your thoughts, wrestling with complexity. Schopenhauer observed, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." But this goes deeper. A man can only become himself through solitude. Identity isn't discovered in social settings, it's performed there. Identity is discovered in isolation, in the absence of external pressure to be anything other than what you are. Think about when you've had your deepest insights. Were you at a party? In a meeting? Making small talk at a coffee shop? No, you were alone, walking, reading, sitting in silence, allowing thoughts to develop without interruption. This is wisdom's starvation, the slow intellectual death that comes from replacing contemplative solitude with social engagement. You're not getting stupider, you're getting shallower. You're maintaining the ability to process information, but losing the ability to think deeply about it. Here's what deep thinking requires: extended, uninterrupted time, minimum 2 to 3 hours, freedom from social performance requirements, permission to follow thoughts wherever they lead, absence of external validation needs, solitude to hear your own thinking. Socializing provides none of these. Instead, it provides constant interruption and fragmentation, pressure to perform socially acceptable versions of yourself, redirection of thoughts towards social harmony, dependence on external validation, noise that drowns out internal contemplation. You cannot develop wisdom while socializing. You can exchange information, you can hear perspectives, you can learn facts, but wisdom, the integration of knowledge into coherent understanding, requires sustained solitary contemplation. Schopenhauer wrote, "Buying books would be a good thing if one could also buy the time to read them." The same applies to wisdom. You cannot acquire it without investing the solitary time required for contemplation, and every hour you spend socializing is an hour you're not investing in the development of understanding.
This is why the world's greatest thinkers were often solitary, not because they hated people, but because they valued wisdom more than social approval. Schopenhauer himself was notoriously unsocial. Nietzsche spent years in isolation. Spinoza ground lenses in solitude. Kant walked alone every day at the same time. These weren't antisocial people. They were people who understood that wisdom has a price, and that price is paid in solitude. They chose contemplation over connection. They chose understanding over approval. They chose depth over breadth. You face the same choice. Every time you say yes to a social engagement, you're saying no to the solitude required for wisdom. Every time you prioritize connection over contemplation, you're choosing to remain intellectually shallow rather than become philosophically deep.
Now you understand why socializing is harmful. The performance tax, the mediocrity infection, the energy extraction, the autonomy erosion, and the wisdom starvation. So what's the path forward? Not the path society wants, not the comfortable solution, the Schopenhauerian path, radical selectivity and strategic isolation. You cannot eliminate socializing entirely. You exist in a social world with practical requirements, but you can minimize it. You can become ruthlessly selective about who gets access to your time and energy. You can stop pretending that more connection is better. Here's what Schopenhauerian social strategy actually looks like. First, embrace radical selectivity. Most people aren't worth socializing with. This isn't cruelty, it's reality. The bell curve of intellectual capacity means most people you encounter will not be able to engage with you at your level. Accept this. Stop trying to find depth where there is none. Stop investing in relationships that don't meet the threshold of intellectual compatibility. You need perhaps 3 to 5 genuine connections in your lifetime, not 30, not 300. 3 to 5 people who can actually understand you, who operate at your cognitive level, who energize rather than drain you. Everyone else is optional at best, harmful at worst. Second, prioritize solitude over society. Stop apologizing for needing alone time. Stop feeling guilty for canceling plans. Stop pretending you enjoy social situations that exhaust you. Schopenhauer was clear. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. Whoever does not love solitude does not love freedom. The loneliest thing you can do is surround yourself with people who cannot understand you. The freest thing you can do is embrace solitude. Fifth, when you must socialize, do so strategically. Minimize the performance tax by being more authentic, even if it makes you socially awkward. The right people will appreciate your authenticity. The wrong people will be repelled by it. This is the filtering mechanism you need. Speak your actual thoughts. Express your genuine opinions. Stop compressing yourself. Yes, this will reduce your social circle. That's the point. Quality over quantity. Depth over breadth. Truth over approval. Fourth, reframe loneliness. Society has pathologized solitude by labeling it loneliness. But there's a difference. Loneliness is the pain of unwanted isolation. Solitude is the peace of chosen isolation. You're not lonely, you're solitary, and solitary is where wisdom lives. Schopenhauer understood. We can be truly ourselves only as long as we are alone. Whoever does not love solitude does not love freedom. The loneliest thing you can do is surround yourself with people who cannot understand you. The freest thing you can do is embrace solitude. Fifth, accept social consequences. Choosing solitude over society comes with costs. People will judge you. They will think you're strange. They will stop inviting you. They will talk about you when you're not there.
Accept this. Their opinion of you is not your responsibility. Your philosophical development is. Sixth, build asynchronous connections. You can connect with great minds without socializing in real time. Read Schopenhauer, study philosophy, engage with ideas.
Here's what Schopenhauer understood that society refuses to accept. Human beings are fundamentally isolated. Connection is temporary, superficial, and largely illusory. The deeper you think, the more isolated you become. And this isn't a problem to solve, it's reality to accept. You are alone, not because you're socially deficient, not because you're broken, but because genuine depth is incompatible with broad social connection. The more you understand, the fewer people can understand you. The deeper you go, the lonelier it gets. Accept it. Socializing will not fix this. It will make it worse. It will drain your energy, erode your autonomy, starve your wisdom, and force you to perform a diminished version of yourself. Accept it. Most people cannot engage with you at your level. Accept it. Most social interactions are net negative transactions for you. Accept it. You will spend most of your life cognitively isolated. Accept it. But here's the liberation hidden in this darkness. Once you accept the futility of finding deep connection through broad socialization, you stop wasting energy on it. You stop trying to force compatibility where none exists. You stop feeling guilty for preferring solitude. You stop performing for approval you don't need. Schopenhauer wrote, "Solitude is the lot of all excellent spirits, not as punishment, but as prerequisite." You cannot be excellent and broadly social. You cannot think deeply and constantly connected. You cannot pursue wisdom and prioritize relationships. The final truth is this: socializing is the worst thing you can do because it requires you to be less than yourself, drain yourself for others, and sacrifice the solitude required for wisdom. And the only way forward is to stop doing it. Not completely, but mostly. Radically reduce your social obligations. Embrace solitude as your natural state. Stop apologizing for needing isolation. Stop trying to be someone you're not. The suffering doesn't disappear. You'll still feel the sting of social judgment. You'll still encounter people who think you're weird or broken. You'll still face pressure to be more social. But you'll have something more valuable than social acceptance. You'll have autonomy, energy, and the space required for genuine wisdom. You'll have yourself fully expressed rather than a socially compressed version performing for approval. Schopenhauer's path is the path of strategic isolation. It's lonely by conventional standards, but it's free. Right? Solitude is freedom. I want to know this resonated. If you found value in this, share it with the few people who will actually understand it. Not everyone, just those rare individuals who already know that being alone is better than being with the wrong people. Subscribe if you want more Schopenhauer in truth that validates your preference for isolation over society. This channel exists for philosophical minds who'd rather be alone than compromise themselves for connection. Remember, socializing is the worst thing you can do not because people are bad, but because your depth requires solitude. Stop apologizing for it. Stop fighting it. Start embracing it. The path of wisdom is the path of solitude. And if that makes you antisocial by conventional standards, then conventional standards are